We know that the quality of marriage advice on the internet these days is top tier, so let's take a look at some of it.
If you are a young single woman looking for a good relationship, this is something you need to hear. Mean women end up with better husbands. Stop being overly nice to men who are trying to court you. I'm not saying actually go out and actively be mean to strangers. I'm saying be a little bit difficult. Be a little bit demanding. Set clear boundaries and standards. And no, not every man is going to like it. In fact, most of them will hate it. And that's exactly why you do it. Because the last thing you want is to end up with a man who is only nice to you when you are doing what he wants you to do. If you find a man who's okay with you being demanding, who's okay with you setting very harsh standards, and who loves all of those things about you, you will end up with a man who is a partner, who respects you, who sees you as an equal, and who will do things for you because you ask. And sometimes even when you don't ask.
A couple of things on this one. So first of all, setting standards and being clear about boundaries does not make you a difficult woman. That just makes you a woman who respects yourself and respects the other person because you call them to a higher standard of loving, right? So it doesn't mean you're difficult or mean if you set standards. There's a difference between setting standards and respecting yourself and your partner and being a mean person. A mean person is mean, unkind, uncharitable, unnecessarily harsh, unvirtuous. A person who respects themselves and sets boundaries is just upholding the equality of dignity and justice that each person has in the partnership. And secondly, a good man is not going to need you to actively step up your difficultness or your meanness in order to treat you well. So if you're with a man who you actively have the thought, okay, clearly I need to up my difficultness or my boundaries or my meanness in order for him to improve his behavior, then that's not a good man. A good man is going to be good to you whether you are stepping up with those boundaries or not. In fact, a good man is going to respect your boundaries that you might even not know are there. They might make you realize new boundaries that you have that they're just naturally respecting. And they're going to respect boundaries that you haven't even voiced to them because they're just natural boundaries of a good human person respecting the dignity of the other.
How do I respond to my husband when he demands submission?
What?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
I guess a little background, I guess. We've been married for almost 3 years, and since we've gotten married, he's often used the Bible verses about wives submit to your husbands and everything to end our arguments. My faith is really important to me, so it feels like a trump card has been played when he does this, and I just shut down.
Yeah, it's like taking a Bible and hitting you in the mouth with it.
Yeah, exactly.
And then blaming you for bleeding on the pages.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
All right, give me an example.
Recently, I guess I brought up my need for a bit more contribution around the house. And this devolved into an hours-long argument where he ended up reading these verses to me off of his phone.
Oh my gosh.
I have no time for people who use the Ephesians 5 verse of the Bible as a justification for asking their wives to submit to them. Yes, it says wives submit to your husband, but in the next breath it says husbands love your wives like Christ loves the church. And Christ loves the church in a way where he submitted to the church. He laid down his life for the church. He honors the church. He dignifies the church. He uplifts the church in every single way. So if you're telling your wife to submit, that is the opposite of what Christ does for his church. Okay, so you cannot use that if you are a man as a reason to belittle or demean or shush your wife. And also, no one really talks about the verse before that, like the very first verse. I think it's verse 21 in Ephesians 5, which says, husbands and wives submit to each other. It's right there. You can't argue that your wife is called to do something different from you in terms of submission when the verse before that, the very first verse of that section on husbands and wives says, submit to each other. You're being asked to do the same thing.
So you don't think that even after, let's say you go on a fourth date with someone, you don't think that you should be offering to pay for dinner once in a while or split it? Or
the girl should never offer to pay even 10 years into the marriage. What do you think is more valuable, Kristen? Your feminine energy or the $50 for the meal?
What if a guy just really doesn't have a lot of money? I mean, I went out with a guy recently. He was a great guy. And he told me on our second date, he's like, I don't have the means. He said to me, you have a certain lifestyle and I can't keep up with that. So
sounds like you dodged a bullet. Why would any girl want to date a broke guy?
Well, 100%. And I've dated some guys where I've paid for everything. And I I'm very traditional in the sense, right? Like I want to be the woman in the relationship because I'm so masculine in my everyday life that when it comes to a relationship, I want to be the feminine. I want a guy to take care of me.
We're not asking the guy to pay for a house, he's just paying for a meal. Like if you can't afford to pay for the meal, find someone else.
By the way, I'm watching these all on 2x speed, so if you see me in slow motion, that's why, because I would have slowed it down for you to view. This whole men paying and women not paying, to me, you're just putting the emphasis on the wrong thing. If you're prioritizing what should be prioritized in a relationship and hopefully an eventual marriage, then it should be your qualities, your character that you pay attention to, not these little accidental things like do they pay or don't they pay. Yes, a good man is going to offer to pay in circumstances, but to say that a woman who offers to pay is XYZ or a man who doesn't offer to pay is XYZ, that's just one little symptom that can come from either a good man or a bad man for lots of different reasons. So to place the whole root of the issue on that one accidental is problematic in my opinion. There are so many wonderful marriages I know that started with the couple dating in high school or university and they had like no money to their name and they made it work. Because what makes a marriage work is not money. Every single couple is going to have financial issues. Whether that's like you might be millionaires, but you'll still have differences in how you manage your finances and how you view finances and wealth in general. You're going to have financial issues. If you're both millionaires but you're not on the same page with that and you're not virtuous people, the marriage is still going to crumble anyway. What counts is that you're people of character who know how to band together and work together even in times of trouble. That's marriage. We're talking about dating here. If anyone's dating and watching this video, you should not cull someone just because they don't pay. Pay attention to their actual characteristic, their character and who they are. It's really lovely if a guy offers to pay. That might not be a red flag in and of itself if they don't pay or if they do pay, depending what side of the fence you sit on that. But also don't judge a woman if she offers to pay. Sometimes a woman might want to pay just because it's a nice thing to do. Also, this idea that paying for a meal is inherently unfeminine, because he compared what's more valuable, your feminine energy or like the $50, to say that a woman's feminine energy necessarily requires that she doesn't pay just makes no sense. It's a fallacy. What makes a woman is not the fact that she doesn't pay. What makes a woman feminine is virtue. And a virtuous woman is going to look different. You're going to have 10 women in front of you, each of them are virtuous, and they're all going to look completely different because they've all got different personalities. Some women are more assertive, some women are more extroverted, like to be out in the workplace, and they might get with a man who is more of a homebody, or because of his life circumstances he doesn't have as much money. The arrangement between the two of them might be that the woman is going to pay for some more things with the interest of their long-term goals in mind. That is totally okay if they're both virtuous people. We're placing the emphasis on the wrong thing here.
If you don't know if you want to marry someone after being in a relationship with them for 2 years,
big sister here, we need to have a little chat. Now, here are my qualifications. I have been married for 1 year, together with my husband for 9 years. And we always used to get the when you're getting married shit. Listen to me, this is the hill that I will die on, okay? You can know you want to marry somebody within 2 years, within 2 weeks, 2 months. That doesn't mean you should get married. You should not get married until your relationship has been tested. Because listen, it is so easy to be like, baby, I love you so much. We could go through anything together. Baby, I'm always going to be there for you. Baby, we could withstand any. You don't know that until you've been through. And I'm not talking about like somebody cheated. I'm talking one of your parents is sick and you're now the primary caretaker. One of you is not from where you live now and you have to go back home to take care of family shit. Somebody gets a career changing opportunity halfway across the country. Somebody gets laid off. Somebody wants to change careers and go back to school. You move in together. You're in an interracial relationship. One of you ends up immobilized. One of you ends up diagnosed with a mental illness. One of you doesn't know how to set boundaries with your family and your relationship is not the first thing. There are so many factors that go into making a successful relationship and a successful marriage. You could have a good time with anybody. Marry somebody you could have a bad time with.
I generally agree with what she is saying. I don't necessarily agree with the conclusion that therefore you shouldn't get married until years into your relationship. I think you can easily, well, not easily, you have to work up the skill yourself of being able to assess and decide someone's character. I think it's totally possible to be able to assess someone's character and virtue in a relationship without taking years to do it. I personally was with my husband for 10 months before we got engaged, but I was 30 at the time. I had dated a lot. I had actively been dating for 12 years at that point, and I knew what I wanted. I had done my master's in theology. I had reverted to the faith. I'd studied what it means to be a good person. I'd gone to therapy for 3+ years at that point. I was well aware what I wanted and well aware what the signs of a good person were, and that was largely because of my dating experience and working out what red flags were and weren't. But I was my husband's first official girlfriend, so he didn't have dating experience yet. He also knew after 10 months. If you're a virtuous person and a person of character, you can absolutely see that sooner than 9 years in her case, or 8 years, whatever it was. Yes, you are not going to go through the hardship in dating of some of the examples she said, like your parents passing away and one of you having to become a primary caregiver for someone sick or whatever it is. You aren't going to go through all those things before marriage necessarily. Sometimes you will, but that's not a reason to delay marriage, you know, waiting for this arbitrary list of, oh, we've gone through enough hardships to now say that we can get married. You can work out a person's character without having gone through those really intense hardships. Everything's proportional. You go through your own hardships in dating, really hard conversations, come to them and challenge their ego, point out some of their vices that are getting in the way of you flourishing. One of my conversations with my now husband was where I sat down with him. It was 2 different times actually. I sat down with him and I basically said to him, look, this is a behavior that you have that gets to me. It gets to me because it suggests XYZ and I'm really struggling with it. So this is what I need from you going forward if we're going to continue the relationship. And it was just the one conversation, and then he changed that behavior and I never had to bring it up again in both situations. Now those are really hard conversations to happen, and he had a couple with me as well that helped me realize my own vices. Those were a hard couple of conversations, but if you're with a person of character and virtue, that person isn't going to get defensive and get angry and get manipulative. They're going to actually listen to what you have to say because they, shocker, actually see you as a person of value who's worthy of infinite love, and they want to be the person worthy of loving you for the rest of your life in that way because they see you as an infinitely valuable individual with immense dignity and worth, right? So they see you that way. They're going to be willing to do whatever they need to do to improve or to love you better. So if you're with a person of virtue and character, they are going to hear you and they're going to look at themselves and say, okay, this is what I need to choose to be better. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that with me to let me know how I can love you better. There are multiple ways in which you can kind of see how you work together with your character and your virtue without having to go through those big astronomical things. So you don't need to wait multiple years. At the same time, you should never choose to marry someone just based on the feeling, like the eros feeling of love, meaning like that uncontrollable love and desire, like emotional love and desire you have for that person, that eros love. It's not going to be sustainable for a marriage. You have to look past the love goggles and see, are they the kind of person who I can do long-term projects with? Are they the kind of person who, if I passed away, I can still trust that they would get my kids' souls to heaven? Are they the kind of person who, if I was in a coma, I would trust them with my life decisions? Are they the kind of person who I trust to bring home and take care of my parents? These are the questions you need to ask yourself.
I believe there is one thing that is the killer of all relationships, and once it shows up, it almost never allows the relationship to be salvaged. It's not money, it's not cheating, it's not in-laws, it's far worse. The killer is contempt. Even though I do have a PhD and my own opinions, this isn't just my perspective. This comes straight out of the longest running study on couples relationships from the Gottman Institute. And the research is clear. Contempt is the single strongest predictor of divorce. I call contempt corrosive because just like rust on metal, it doesn't take the structure down in one day. It doesn't make a big scene at first. It quietly eats away, comment by comment, sigh by sigh, eye roll by eye roll, until the holes are too big to repair.
I'm going to agree with this. I think, yeah, it is absolutely toxic for a marriage to allow contempt to eat you away. And by that we mean, and it's really hard to choose on some days. Those days where you've had a really hard day, it's a rough day at work, maybe you've had 7 different fights or disagreements over the last week and you're just so sick of them. And instead of being like, okay, let me meet this next disagreement head on, you choose to do the eye roll. You choose to go, yep, sure, all right, sorry, like that kind of attitude. Your spouse is not a fool. They can sense when there is that contempt there. That is not good for them. That will erode their trust in you. It is is also likely, if there is contempt and they can very clearly see that, it is more likely that they are no longer going to raise issues with you, and you really don't want that, because we know what resentment over time can do to a marriage.
Should I ever disclose to my wife that we are secretly worth millions of dollars?
Are you from another culture?
I was born in Korea, but I was raised in San Jose.
So you were raised by Korean parents that immigrated here?
That is correct.
Okay.
And
because in Anglo-America, what you just described, as you probably realize, is pretty whacked. That's why I immediately said, is there some kind of a cultural reason for this? Because it's very unusual.
I work. My wife is a stay-at-home wife because that's just how we chose to. The thing is, I'm the saver and she's the spender. I have been working very hard, working my job in my business to grow to where we are. And I am not sure whether I should ever disclose our net worth to her, because I do not know how she's going to react.
Yeah. Well, she's probably going to react poorly because she's married to a guy who's deceived her. Don't you think?
To be honest, the thing is, she and I have very different perspectives when it comes to finances. I got that. A saver, like I'm a minimalist. She's very much a free spirit.
I know, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the fact that you've been married to her for 5 years and sleeping with her for 5 years. She didn't know you got any money. That's deception.
I handle all the finances in the family.
Honey, you're not listening. You keep deflecting every time I bring this at you. You have deceived your wife actively. She's not going to be cool with that. You hear that?
So I understand that she's going to be she is going to be angry. What I'm more troubled about is how she is going to take the news of these finances, and if she's going to spend even more.
I can empathize with the idea that it would be a struggle in this situation, and you would be worried about finances. And if you have built your empire, quote unquote, and built up all this money and wealth, and the person that you're with does not have such great spending habits, I can definitely understand the hesitation to be completely open about finances. At the same time, there are thousands of temptations in marriage to just omit a little piece of information or to just tell that little white lie. And let me tell you, that erodes trust. And trust is the most important thing in any relationship, in any marriage. That should be a given. I shouldn't have to go into that. If that wife finds out that he was lying or omitting their finances, that will make his marriage 10 times worse than if he had told her the truth and she had spent quite a bit of money. I know that sounds ridiculous, but money can always be made more. You can always downsize in your way of life, but you can't get back eroded trust. Once trust has eroded or broken down in a really big way with really big betrayal, an event of really big betrayal, it is super, super, super hard to get back. That person does not forget that experience of feeling betrayed and the trust disappearing. From that moment, that wife, every time finance comes up, she's going to question inside and outside, probably, whether he is telling the truth. Every single day going forward, the wife is going to question whether the husband is withholding information from her. And if he withheld information about finances, what else is he holding information about? When trust is eroded in a marriage, that's what it does. It makes the marriage so much worse over time. It is much better to be honest about literally everything. You've bound yourselves to each other. You've said in sickness and in health, what's mine is yours. We are one till death do us part. You have to respect that and see things as these are our things, not my things. Because if you start to see marriage as this is my thing, not our thing, that is a recipe for starting to see you guys as separate, and therefore, oh, that's mine, that's yours. Fighting over those things, it very much contributes to a mentality over time, like me against her, me against him. Oh, I can leave him one day. That kind of mentality, it could be more likely that you will end up divorcing if you see each other as separate entities, individual against each other in some way. Whereas if you facilitate and nurture the habit of thinking of yourself as a team and as one, then it is more likely to be a non-negotiable in your mind that this is a union for life. And so it may seem like something like withholding finances is tiny, but there are so many reasons why that is bad for a marriage, and you should just be honest and give the opportunity to the the spouse to improve. If you already have branded her with this attitude of, well, she's just going to spend the money, then you're not actually extending grace to her and giving her the opportunity to choose the good, to be better. You've got to have free will in that marriage. Here's the information, here's our money. I am going to ask you and encourage you to be really responsible with that money. You know, you teach a child to be responsible by giving them opportunities to be responsible. Not saying that a spouse or this wife is like a child, but if you're worried about someone and their vice, the only way that vice is going to get better is by giving them an opportunity to let it get better and to grow the habit of it getting better. An answer to the wife's alleged vice of overspending is not the husband choosing vice himself. Two vices don't make a virtue. If someone's got a vice in marriage, the way that the marriage gets better and you grow closer is you bring virtue to the table and say, well, no, I'm going to call you out on this. I'm going to fraternally correct you. I'm going to encourage you to be better. I am not going to meet your vice with vice. Recipe for disaster.
I'm a happily married woman, and I tell women all the time not to get married. You know why? Because I was 24 when I got married. I was a baby. My frontal lobe was not fully developed. I didn't know anything. I got fucking lucky. Okay? I got lucky, and I've been transparent about that from the get-go. Because statistically speaking, we know how women end up in most cis-het relationships, okay? It ain't good for them. It's not good for them. I got lucky. Okay? I got lucky. At 24, you think I knew what I was looking for in a good husband and a good life partner? And who would eventually be a good father to my children? No, I sure didn't. But I can look back 14 years ago as a woman, as a married mother who has a great marriage, who has an equitable partner. I can now tell women, hey, listen to the married woman. Listen to the happily married woman. If I'm happily married and I'm telling you, don't do it, it's not worth it, what do you think an unhappily married woman is going to tell you? It's not. For most women, it's not worth it. Because for most women, you will end up doing the majority of the domestic labor and the child care. You'll probably still end up working. And then you'll outgrow your husband. That is the unfortunate truth of it. You want to sit here and tell women that they can't share this information to other women because they're married? Shut the fuck up. Shut up, dude. Okay? You want to listen to a single person? This is the same thing. Like, if I was single and telling women this, you would tell me I was bitter and single and lonely. I'm not. I've been happily married for 12 years, and I wouldn't recommend it. Because that's coming from a very, very privileged place. Because most women don't have what I have, okay?
Okay, well, first of all, I feel really sad for this woman. I'm not sure what she's seeing in her close relationships or online or whatever about marriage, or what her experience is with marriage that has made her think that she should tell women not to get married. She said her reason is that most women aren't going to get lucky like she did. I mean, marriage doesn't have to be about luck. You don't just marry someone. You really should not be just marrying someone just because you have those lovey-dovey feelings for them. That is not enough in a marriage. If you've made the right decision about who you're going to marry, then it was not at all based on luck. It was based on hard discernment, hard work, rational thought, and yes, there were emotions as well, but you actively put those aside to discern the character of the person. And so if you've done that, then the person you marry is going to make your life astronomically easier. That's how I feel. Granted, I'm only 3 years into marriage, but I feel like my life has been made so much easier because I have a good man standing by me. Like the joy of coming home to my best friend every single night and just goofing off, or I can speak to him about whatever the heck is on my mind. And it usually ends up in fruitful conversation. We can watch a movie and unpack and dissect it, or we can spend time with our son and just have the best time ever. And you know, things come up and we have a productive conversation and then we move on. Like it's a really wonderful way to live. I never have to be lonely again. I can know for the rest of my life that I have a man I deeply respect and admire and love by my side. Marriage has just been the closest thing to heaven, as I said in a previous video, the closest thing to heaven that I've experienced on this planet, and it's made me a better person. It's made both of us a better person, and it's absolutely something to aspire to. But make sure that you don't need to rely on luck about whether that person turns out to be good or not. Do the hard work of discerning before you get married. that dating period is very, very important to assess each other's character.
Here's one of 2 phrases that saved my marriage and has given me what I'm biased, but I think I got the best marriage around. Every single day of my life, my wife and I ask each other this question: what does your picture of today look like? Not, what do you want to do today? Or, what's happening? What does your picture of today look like?
I actually love that that's relevant to my life. It happened on the weekend that my husband and I had a Saturday, which is like, Saturdays are so valuable for us. A Saturday where we don't really have a lot of plans and we have the entire day to ourselves. We ended up on Saturday night having to have a big conversation about what had gone wrong on that day. And it was all due to our images and expectations of the day being different. Us not communicating what we expected, or us not communicating in the moment when something happened during the day that we didn't like. And then what ended up happening was a day that was supposed to be a lovely family day, a day off, a wonderful day with each other, ended up still being really lovely, but it could have been much better had we just communicated our expectations. And sometimes we're like, oh, we don't want to spoil the day by sort of saying, no, I don't actually feel like doing this. Can we do this instead? But it's much better if you really don't want to do something and the other spouse is saying, I want to do this. It's much better if you voice that you don't want to do it, because then you can reach a decision together about what you want to do, and then the day ends up just being better rather than one spouse sitting on this resentment or the fact that they're not enjoying their day. So this is so relevant. Literally just happened to me. This is really good advice in my opinion.
You want to know whether or not somebody has a successful marriage, and I'm going to give you a clue. It's not about the vacations that they take. It's not about how many cars they have in the driveway. It's not about whether or not their children are successful. It's whether or not they speak life about one another while the other person isn't in the room. And they are not criticizing or condemning their partners to other people. They wouldn't be caught doing that, because this is something that they probably do in private as well. They speak life and positivity about their partners because they know what their partners are capable of. They love their spouse so much. Why would they put their spouse down in front of other people?
That is also incredible advice. Completely candidly, I didn't know this going into marriage. I mean, I knew it's not good to talk bad about people, your spouse included, but I didn't realize how important it was in a marriage. When I had perinatal depression, which was immediately after falling pregnant, I didn't understand what perinatal depression was going to do to me. And so I believed the lie in my head that everything that was wrong about what I was feeling was actually due to my husband. And I didn't go and talk badly about him, but I remember saying a few things to my sister and her kind of being like, oh, no, I don't know that that's your husband. It's not, you're putting the blame on the wrong thing. And then later when I got over the depression, I really hated, I could not forget that I'd even that I'd said those few things to my sister that had questioned his integrity or who he was as a man that I knew he was when I married him. And that was the first time I felt that ick of the truth of what I knew about my husband, the man of integrity and virtue that he is, and those words that I'd spoken that were incorrect of his character, and how jarring that was and how yucky and icky that felt within myself. And that provoked deep thought about this whole talking about badly about your spouse thing. And I haven't done it since because I haven't really needed to. The thing is, a good marriage, if you want your marriage to be good, talking about your spouse to other people is not ever a good decision. Granted, if there's something you're really going through in your marriage, like really struggling with, maybe you're not seeing the other person's perspective, or maybe they have a certain behavior that you don't like, that maybe you're not sure is objectively wrong or right, and you need to flesh out that idea and process it with someone, yes, go to someone, a close friend who you trust, who you know that's not going to get out. They're not going to tell anyone about what you say, and flesh it out with them. But make sure that you're fleshing it out in a way that's like, I know that my spouse is a person of integrity and virtue and I love them. At the same time, they're doing this behavior or this thing happened that I don't quite understand. So can you, close friend, can you please help me see what I might be missing here? Can you help to perspective shift for me to help work out where we might have missed each other here? Basically what I'm saying is make it very clear to the person that the reason you're talking about this thing is because you want to understand your spouse better and you want your marriage to thrive and you want to move past this, whether that's deciding to bring up the issue with your spouse or deciding that you can work through it yourself, and maybe it's one of those battles you're not going to pick. Sometimes externally processing that with someone is really good. All other talking smack about your spouse is really not good for the marriage. You don't know if it's going to get back to your spouse. And as I said earlier in the video, once your spouse hears from someone else a bad thing you said about them, trust disappears. The betrayal that person will feel in their heart is never worth it. Trust is incredibly hard to get back in a marriage. So that's a negative. There's a negative in terms of the icky feeling that you are going to have from having spoken badly about your spouse. There's the negative of what your friend is going to think about you for having heard you speak negatively about your spouse. It's a net negative. There are no positives. You don't even feel like, you might like feel good in the moment, but it's instant gratification for getting validation from the person you're speaking to, which isn't actually about your spouse. It's more about you and your own insecurities and your own vice, the fact that you feel the need to speak about that. Now, if you are in an abusive situation or there's objective wrong going on in your marriage and you're seeking help about that, that is a completely different story. You need to seek help if you are in an abusive marriage. But a lot of the time it isn't abuse, it's your own stuff coming up. And a lot of the time it can be solved from just talking to your spouse about the issue. And if you're with a virtuous person, that will be a good conversation where you walk away feeling like you understand each other better and with some good strategies for how to navigate conflict going forward. If you're with someone but maybe isn't super virtuous, or, you know, contempt has entered your marriage, or there's like that stewing resentment and they're not being communicative, yeah, flesh that out with someone else. But generally, if you're in a good marriage, I mean, you shouldn't be talking negatively about your spouse, but if you're in a good marriage, you're not going to want to talk negatively about your spouse. That's the thing. So I have never, ever felt the need, aside from that one example I said, when I was in depression and didn't really understand. I was fresh into marriage because we fell pregnant right away and I didn't understand marriage, and I was projecting and not understanding what was going on with my hormones because it was so scary and new. But yeah, I've never ever felt the need to talk smack about my spouse. I respect him so much. I would never, if you're talking negatively about your spouse, or feel the need to talk negatively about your spouse, except in the case of like abuse or legitimate issues, in the case where you're like processing them externally with a friend, then that's more of a you issue than it is a them issue, especially if you're in a crowd of people or a group of people and you talk smack about your spouse. You got to ask yourself, why do I feel the need to talk smack about my spouse in this situation? What kind of validation or attention am I trying to get here, or what other pathological things might be going on?
I want to know from women over 35 if cohabitating with men is really worth it.
It's been said before, but I'll say it again. Marriage isn't really good for women. Women don't benefit from being married to men. The comment section on this video is full of women who say this, happily married here, and I say this without weirdness, but if he dies first, and he knows this, LOL, I will not do it again. So many of the comments came from married women who claim to be happily married, who say they would never choose to live with a man again. And I think this speaks volumes about the dynamics that exist in our culture overall, right? When men get married, they expect their wife to take care of them, to cook for them, to clean for them, to take care of their children, to have children for them, and they go off and work. But in today's world, these women are also working. And so not only are they working full-time, but they are also expected to care for the home and the children and do exponentially more work in the home than their partner. And oftentimes these men have been raised without the information or expectation that they'll take care of the home themselves or take care of the kids. And so even when they try to help, they need a list, they need her to tell him what to do, and it's exhausting for women. It's been shown that marriage isn't actually good for women. Women who are single do better than men. Also, having children isn't really good for women, right? We have the wage gap, the motherhood penalty, and the fact that having children can put women at a higher risk of financial troubles in the future, right? Marrying men, living with men, and having children doesn't quote unquote benefit women in the same way it does men, which is why so many women say they would never do it again. And that's also why so many men remarry so fast.
I mean, I wouldn't marry again purely because, I mean, I haven't thought about it at all. Like, I don't think I would need to marry again necessarily. But as I said, marriage is just the most joyful thing ever. And I say this as a woman who has permanent birth injury. It's still worth it. And motherhood has been really wonderful for me. Again, if you've got a partner who is virtuous, marriage is really wonderful for a woman. If you've got a virtuous person who actually goes into marriage thinking like, this is my life goal, my life vocation, my life job now is to serve and love this person. And think about it. If both people go into marriage with that mentality, my goal and mission is to love and serve this person, and you think that about the other person the entire marriage, How can that be bad? During motherhood, postpartum, like since my injury, it's happened that my husband cooks most of our meals. We have a system where I put the boy to bed. My husband cleans the house while I'm doing that. If you marry a virtuous person, they're not going to be stuck to these gender roles about what the man should do and what the woman should do. My husband uplifts me in my desire to work. He encourages me to do so. He encourages me to pursue my creative projects, which is something he knows deeply fuels my soul. And so if you're in a good marriage with a good person who's thinking of you all the time, of course we're not perfect because we're human, but if you're generally thinking of each other most of the time, thinking of the other most of the time, you are naturally going to uplift and serve and help the person. And what could be better than that? I'm really baffled and sad. I'm sad that a lot of women are in this position, because I do see how if you end up in a relationship where there's a lot of vice and there are those strict gender roles and people are looking at the accidentals of like what a woman should be and a man should be rather than virtue and what it means to be virtuous, which is naturally going to bring out your most masculine side and your most feminine side. I know how those relationships can feel and turn out because I've been in emotionally abusive relationships before, and yeah, they were rough. So I really feel for women who are in that situation. I can definitely understand if you're a woman who has been made to do all the housework and made to work and raise the kids, it would be a nightmare unless you chose of your own free will to do that. But that's the point, right? In a good virtuous marriage, you should be constantly giving the other the freedom to choose the good. So I really feel for these women who are in these kinds of marriages. But I just want to say, like, marriage doesn't have to be like that. So as you may have heard, my son is waking up, so I'm going to stop it there. But this was an interesting yap to the camera, and if you enjoyed this, give it a like, leave me your comments because I'm sure some of you disagree with some of the stuff that I've said in this video, and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more like this.